The Western military officials have been accusing Russia of lying about pulling back its troops from the Ukrainian border. The latest U.S. Intel reports suggests that Moscow has in fact added more than 7,000 combatants near the borders of Ukraine. The U.S. officials have directly accused Russia of lying. The British military officials have claimed that they've spotted Russian armoured vehicles, helicopters and a field hospital moving towards Ukraine's border. The West has warned that there is fresh evidence of Russia mobilising for war. Even the latest Ukrainian intelligence report shows no evidence of Russia pulling back its forces.
На превеликий жаль, підтвердити цю інформацію ми не можемо саме об'єктивними показниками. Це не підтверджено даними ані української розвідки, ані даними наших розвідувальних товариств, наших стратегічних партнерів. Вони заяву цю зробили, невеличкі підрозділи ніби як зробили рух, але насправді говорити, що деескалація відбувається, неможливо, тому що їх слова не підтверджені практики, вони не вивели війська.
Well, the Western warnings contrast sharply with Russia's attempts to show that it is de-escalating. Fresh satellite images support Western statements. Images show Russia moving some of its military equipment deployed near Ukraine. There is still a lot of forces and equipment near its ex-Soviet neighbour. Battle groups of armoured vehicles, a new attack helicopter unit and artillery were visible at Zayabrovka airfield. Satellite images also showed heightened military activity, with a pontoon bridge less than 6 kilometres from the Belarus-Ukraine border. Russia, meanwhile, announced more troop withdrawals from the annexed Crimea Peninsula today. This is the second such announcement that its forces were pulling back after exercises in the southern and western military districts near Ukraine. On Wednesday, it even published a video that showed tanks, artillery and units leaving the Crimean Peninsula. Well, for more on this, we're joined by our correspondent Susan Turani, who's joining us live from New York. Susan, Moscow continues to say that troops are coming back, but NATO remains unconvinced. Why so?
Well, we've been hearing for at least a couple of days from U.S. and NATO officials that it has evidence that not only is Russia not pulling back, but it's actually increasing its forces on the Ukrainian border and also sending in blood supplies and building field hospitals. During a press conference that we just heard, part of Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said that in many ways this, meaning the Russia troop buildup, brings Russia troops at NATO's steps. We will, if we must, defend every inch of NATO territory. There is no reason that it should come to this. He also said that Ukraine has not threatened any country, and that's why that Russia should not. And yet, that is what Moscow would have us to believe the reason for the troop buildup. And I think it was interesting that he says that we see them much closer, fly more aircrafts, stocking them blood supplies, as I mentioned. And it was interesting. He said, I was a soldier and can tell you firsthand that is for no reason. And just a side note here, the United States is planning on re-establishing and expanding its presence in Poland. We heard today from the Defense Department and also reports from the New York Times, and the reason for that is because the Defense Department believes that this troop buildup, despite Russia's denial on the Ukrainian border, is not only for Ukraine, but really Vladimir Putin has ambitions to move past Ukraine and to Poland as well.
And Susan, how would you evaluate Lloyd Austin, the US Defense Secretary's tone when he made a statement meeting European allies?
So this trip really by Lloyd Austin was to send a message not only to Vladimir Putin, but in many ways to Xi Jinping and to the Iranians as well, that if in any way there was any concern that there might be some kind of rift in the united policies of NATO when it comes to dealing with adversaries like That won't be the case, and I think that Lloyd Austin and NATO officials really did demonstrate that, at least in the beginning of this meeting. So far as we've seen, that has been the tone, because we saw that statements have really been in line, but also recent developments that have come out, first with Russia's denial that it doesn't want to attack Ukraine, and then saying that it's pulled back its troops. Let's not mention that Russia too did provide footage that it's pulling back some of its troops from Crimea, as did the West provide footage that it's increasing its troops elsewhere. But all of the statements and all of their sort of tone and rhetoric, the United States and heads of NATO, and then other European ministers, and then other heads of states, you know, Joe Biden, Olaf Scholz, Emmanuel Macron, they've really set the same tone in saying that they will be united and defiant against Russia. And I think that was very important for Lloyd Austin to go on the international stage and say that, because there was sort of that kind of understanding, if you may, that Vladimir Putin might sort of take advantage of a rift between NATO and the United States and stage this incursion.
Thank you, Susan. That was Susan Tarani joining us live from New York City.